Hello again, everybody. We are back for another NFC West roundtable. Again, we're joined by Mike Jurecki from the Cardinals, Stu Jackson from the Rams, and Keiana Martin from the 49ers. We're going to talk a little bit about the draft that just took place, talk a little bit about the schedules that came out on Wednesday, and just want to kind of take the temperature of the NFC West as we head into the offseason here. Let's just start off with a little draft talk. Keiana, what the 49ers do? We all obviously know about that number 3 pick was the big thing, but just what are your kind of overall impressions of this draft class?
Yeah, I think the 49ers actually, aside from that number 3 overall pick, I would say they surprised a lot of not just fans, but people around the league. For the last 18 years, the 49ers have drafted a wide receiver. This was the first draft. They were like, no, we're not going wide receiver. We want to fill other needs and add some depth at other positions. And one being on the offensive line. Listen, they have invested so much into the quarterback position, not just Trey Lance, but also Jimmy Garoppolo. So you need to put some pieces there to help protect your quarterback and your investment. So that's what they did. They did that in the second round with Aaron Banks out of Notre Dame. They did it again in the 5th round with Jalen Moore out of Western Michigan. And then also, Kyle Shanahan, what he loves about his running backs. He loves that running back position and the versatility that he finds in some of these guys. So bringing in Trey Sermon from Ohio State and also Elijah Mitchell from Louisiana Lafayette. So bringing in 2 running backs in this draft who, Kyle Shanahan, he likes guys that can catch passes out of the backfield and also carry the rock, but also not afraid if they need to block, they can do that as well. So doing some of those things and then also shoring up that secondary with the cornerback position and safety. So that's kind of a gist of what the 49ers did, but it's still that shock like, hey, no wide receiver. So they clearly have a lot of faith in Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk. You've got Mohamed Sanu up there, and then also Travis Benjamin and some other guys.
And just what do you make of the Trey Lance pick? Obviously, there was uncertainty there. There were some good options, different quarterbacks, a lot of names being thrown around. Just what do you think about the decision they make?
It's so funny that leading up to the draft, there's so many theories of what guy makes the most sense for what reason. But now that the pick is in and he's now a 49er, it makes so much sense when you look at what he was required to do, what Trey Lance was required to do at North Dakota State, and how similar that offense is to what Kyle Shanahan likes to run. Kyle's big on that play action bootleg and things like that. And that's exactly what Trey Lance did. So when you sit back and look at the draft picks and those options that they had available, I think Trey Lance made so much sense for what Kyle Shanahan likes to do.
Yeah, I mean, even a guy like Chris Sims, who, has a relationship, but clearly they kept everything close to the vest. I mean, it was all Mac Jones, and then you started to see Justin Fields kind of get more love. And so, yeah, I mean, I didn't think it would be Mac Jones just because when you look at the skill set, they were looking for a guy with Lamar Jackson feet and kind of a Drew Brees type quarterback with the arm strength. So that kind of fits the profile, more traits. But do you think we'll see him, at some point, maybe certain packages, or the plan is to let Jimmy go?
You know what? I think that's the question that everybody wants to know. When will we see Trey Lance? Will we see him sooner than later? Could it be, like you said, in one of these special packages? We don't know. But what Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch continue to preach is Jimmy's their guy. So I think at week 1, that's who you're going to see under center, but it'll be exciting to see how they utilize and start to slowly implement Trey Lance into the offense.
All right, let's talk Rams. Much like the Seahawks, you guys were a little limited on draft capital thanks to some trades, but what the Rams come away with? What are your thoughts on what they did draft weekend?
Sure. Well, I think a lot of the outside perception and expectation was that they would address the offensive line, but Sean McVay, the Rams head coach, had said before the draft that they would have been entirely comfortable, potentially going the entirety of the 3-day event without selecting one. And sure enough, that signaled the confidence they had in the offensive line. Instead, they went with Tutu Atwell, and in the second round, explosive, speedy, deep threat receiver who will help with meeting the goal that Sean McVay has for creating more explosive plays for the offense. Then you also had them address some defensive line depth later on with picks like Bobby Brown from Texas A&M in the 4th round, Ernest Brown in the 5th round, and even getting an edge rusher there in the 7th round with Division II prospect in Chris Garrett, an outside linebacker. So There were, in addition to that, you also had a lot of athletes that can also help on special teams and who are also based on their athletic traits, maybe some developmental type players and guys like Jacob Harris from UCF, Ben Skoranek from Notre Dame, and Jake Funk from Maryland. So those are just a few of the highlights, of course, but really it was ultimately about, again, making sure that they have somebody in place, to help with creating those explosive plays and also making sure that they replace some of those losses in free agency along the defensive line, and also, in the secondary, getting a guy like Central Arkansas cornerback Robert Rochelle. So again, a little bit different than I think what people expected, but if you had been following McVay's comments, then you probably wouldn't have been too surprised to see them go the route they did with the picks they made.
Stu, what kind of competition are they going to have on the offensive line? Is it still is it set right now, or is it more interior than the outside?
Yeah, and so the main position that's in question right now, or up for grabs, you could say, is the center position, because Austin Blythe obviously left in free agency and signed with the Kansas City Chiefs. Yeah. McVay has said that he feels like they've got some really good internal options already on the roster, and Coleman Shelton, who was signed a couple of seasons ago. And then you also have Brian Allen, who was a draft pick of the team back in 2018, has starting experience. And then, of course, Austin Corbett, who was an interesting name as well, was kind of learning the center position with the Browns, but, has the ability to flex inside from right guard if needed. He's been a big part of their run game and the run blocking, but it sounds like he's somebody who's just as capable of sliding over if they really wanted him to. So those three guys kind of sound like the main options. And then from there, you kind of have to figure out what to do at right guard and potentially left guard. I mean, you assume David Edwards still holds that position down, but that's kind of what the interior looks like as of right now.
Stu, I can't believe we're having this conversation and we didn't talk about the biggest storyline of the draft, and that's obviously the Rams draft house. Did you get to go? Give us a little insight on that, what went down.
Stu was actually in the pool the whole time, right? Just on a floaty with a cocktail.
That's right. No, I was actually where I'm sitting right now here at our main business headquarters, but it was still a really cool experience. I obviously got to be there a few days before the draft, and it's fun to do something different. And it looked like both the Rams and the Cardinals had a little bit of fun with it on social media leading into it too. So yeah, different experience, but certainly one that I think, those who did get to attend and be there really enjoyed.
Poor GM had to quarantine in his garage, though. I mean, that was not as planned.
Yeah, unexpected, but Les certainly made the best of it, and I'm sure he feels good about the picks that he was still able to make, and of course the deals with trading back that he was able to accomplish as well.
Mike, let's talk a little about the Cardinals draft. Obviously going defense first with Zaven Collins. Just seems like they're really loading up on that side of the ball. How does he fit in? Just what do you project this defense to look like?
Yeah, I don't know if they went into the draft where they had 6 picks and they ended up with 7, but 5 defensive players. And, it was interesting because I think if one of those top 2 corners would have dropped, I think Caleb Farley was a little bit down on their board, even though he went to the Titans. And then a couple of those receivers were gone. Vera Tucker was off the board. And they were concerned with the Patriots, because you look at Zaven Collins has been compared to Jamie Collins, a little bit of Brian Urlacher. But obviously, quarterback trumps that. So when they took Mac Jones, the Cardinals were excited. So they took Zaven Collins, and he's going to be a plug-and-play guy from day one. And we know last year in week 1, Kyle Shanahan went right after Isaiah Simmons. He exposed him in week 1. Week 1, even though the Cardinals were able to get that victory. But, Jordan Hicks, they asked him to take a pay cut, looking for a trade now. I would try to bring back Devondre Campbell. 2 years ago, the Cardinals gave up close to 18 touchdowns to tight ends. Last year, only 3. And then I think it's an indictment on Andy Isabella and possibly Christian Kirk. They take Rondell Moore, who's a guy that's going to be your 3rd or 4th receiver, is going to be your kick returner, punt returner. He's a guy that really is a jet sweep guy, bubble screen guy. So they're hoping he can open up the offense. And then they really needed some corners, so they took Marco Wilson in the 4th round. They moved up with the Ravens to get an extra pick there. They gave up a 4 next year. And then they also took a young man named Tay Gowan. Did an interesting story where he had a premature baby. His mother got COVID. His sister got COVID. He opted out. So a small sample, but really a skill set. And then he took James Wiggins in the 7th round. He's a safety just to kind of flood the position. And then with Rodney Hudson under contract the next couple of years, they drafted Michael Minette from Penn State, a 3-year starter captain. So, you look ahead of it. They filled some needs and holes. And, quite frankly, I'm really curious to see how this is going to work out. I think they're anticipating J.J. Watt and Zach Allen and Jordan Phillips. And then you throw in Chandler and Marcus Golden. But you're relying on 2 young guys, and that's the trend. I mean, you look at San Francisco all those years with Patrick Willis and Navarro Bowman. You look at the Buccaneers, Devin White, Levante David. So it's going to be interesting. But they say he's going to be a day 1 starter. I just think teams are going to attack him if they can't stop the run.
Mike, how surprised were you that the Cardinals, went linebacker and then wide receiver? I think if anybody followed the mock drafts, or like I said, the outside the facility opinion, it might have been flipped or more closely to what the Rams did, where they used their first pick on a wide receiver and then went linebacker in the 3rd round. How surprised were you with the direction the Cardinals took there?
I know they really like Jalen Waddle. Smith and Chase. I just thought those guys would be off the board. They did like Bateman from Minnesota. I don't think they would have taken him there. It would have been interesting, though, if Collins goes off the board at 15 or earlier. They were considering taking Najee Harris there. And I'm thinking, wow, at 16 now. I think he went perfect at 23, and then the Clemson running back. Again, I think they would have traded down. I know in the 2nd round, before they took Rondell Moore, they had interest in A.J. Samuel Jr., and they would have taken him, but he went to Chargers 2 picks before, so then they decided to get a receiver. So I think they had some flexibility. They weren't going to force a pick, but it looks like they filled some needs, and we'll see what happens on rookie minicamp. How about John?
Yeah, John, I'm very interested. We talked about this prior going into the draft and, the limited amount of draft picks, but still being able to maximize, to be able to fill not necessarily holes, but maybe some needs and some depth. But what do you think of what the Seahawks are able to do?
Well, 2 things. One, I think we're all kind of shocked they actually only made 3 picks. We were all kind of assuming that John Schneider would wheel and deal and somehow come out of there with 5-6 guys. But they did briefly hold 4 picks when they moved back in the 2nd round, but then they traded that pick back away to move up in the 6th round. So I think that showed a little bit kind of how they felt about the depth at the back end of the draft. They just didn't see maybe the value as you would in past years of loading up on 6th, 7th round picks. They'd rather just get their guys in round 2 and 4. So obviously very limited resources with all the trades they'd made to add players like Jamal Adams, Gabe Jackson, and Carlos Dunlap. But I think it was, if anything, a little surprising that they went sort of the needs that made sense to all of us, because they tend to zig when everyone else is zagging and we're never sure what the Seahawks are going to do. So for them to, go out round 2 and get Dwayne Eskridge, a receiver who, he'll have to compete for it, but looks like the front runner to be that number 3 guy along with Lockett and Metcalf, and just fits in great in terms of the speed and a lot of things that, if we're assuming that there's going to be some Rams elements to this offense with Shane Waldron here, It looks like a guy who could, do some fly sweep stuff, be a run after catch kind of guy, also potentially a returner. And then, another position we're talking about is need, at least for competition, is cornerback. And they go out and get Oklahoma's Trey Brown there. Another special team guy, and, he'll compete for a starting job. And then 6th round, they went with Stone Forsythe, a big tackle out of Florida, who was kind of all over the map in draft projections. Some people thought he was a day 2 pick, and he lasted all the way till the 6th round. He's not likely a starter this year. I mean, if he wows everybody and could somehow win a job, great. But most likely he's a guy that you have for depth and is a possible guy down the road. Right now, Seattle's top 3 veteran tackles are all done with their contracts after 2021. So, obviously you could re-sign some of those guys, but they're going to have need there in the future. So 3 positions that really made sense. I think especially in Eskridge, a guy who can help you right away, possibly Brown, depending on how the competition goes. But yeah, to me, the biggest takeaway is they really went out and targeted some specific needs and came up with guys they really like.
Seems like besides the Niners, the Cardinals, Rams, and Seahawks went after receivers when we drafted 3 receivers a couple of years ago. So, I mean, in Cliff's offense, I mean, they want to spread it around, but you can't go 4 wide every time because you got to protect Murray. So it'd be interesting to see how it looks, and then we'll wait and see what happens with Larry Fitzgerald.
To me, it's always going to be fun to watch what happens with the 2 second-round receivers going back to back, Seattle and LA. Inevitably, those guys are always going to be compared to each other. So that'll be something we revisit down the road.
Oh, trust me, we hear about that DK Metcalf every day.
Yeah, that'll happen. Whenever somebody pops in the later rounds, everybody wants to say, "Oh, we almost took him." I can't tell you over the years how many teams almost drafted Russell Wilson. So.
Oh, I mean, I'm sure a lot of general managers had to go to owners and say, "Where did you have this guy ranked? 3rd round?" A lot of teams missed on that.
Well, yes,
so everything's good. Russell Wilson's good. Everything's good.
I think so. I mean,
sounds like it.
Happy, and he's. That seems to have quieted down, which is nice. I mean, Pete Carroll, John Schneider talked at length about it prior to the draft, and they made it very clear that he's their quarterback and not going anywhere. And some things were discussed, and some things got out that probably shouldn't have, but seems like they're all in a good place now, and hopefully that's all behind them for the season. We can focus on other NFC quarterback drama now, outside of the division.
I was wondering if you're shooting shots this way.
No. Outside of the NFC West, and we all know where.
Yeah. I mean, I was shocked when that dropped before the draft.
Yeah, there's the draft day crazy stories it's good entertainment. We'll see what happens with it. Let's turn our attention to the schedule a little bit. That's all. It's become it's funny. Mike, you've probably been around this league longer than the rest of us. Schedule release didn't used to be a big deal, and now it's quite the event the NFL has made out of it. I guess maybe before we get to the schedules, what do you think of how big this has become, Mike?
Well, I mean, we know at the end of the season who they're playing. The thing is, we don't know when they're playing. So, and then we can look next year. We got the opponents based on where you finish in the division. I mean, a 3-hour show on the NFL Network. Buda Baker. We did a show finally for the first time outside at Four Peaks in Scottsdale. We had Buda Baker there. They had live coverage. So, yeah, it's unbelievable. I mean, and I was listening to the radio locally, and they were doing a mock schedule. I'm like, I mean, teams offer, if you get every game right, maybe you'll get season tickets for the next 5 years. I mean, it's jumped the shark. But I think for fans, especially this year, once you get the schedule, you can start planning trips. And, I'm sure the airlines were heavy on that. And, the Bird Gang and the Red Sea do travel a little bit, and we'll see what happens. But yeah, it's just, I mean, I like it because the build up, but we know who they're playing. It's just we don't know when.
The order of games.
Yeah,
you're right, though. I think for fans this year in particular, who didn't get to go to games last year, the buildup might be a little bigger, and you start looking at some of those early season home games and think how exciting that'll be. It's going to be fun to hopefully have some packed stadiums again. I don't know. I mean, as you said, we all knew the opponents already, but when you look at it, just sort of how the schedule is laid out, Mike, what do you think of the Cardinals schedule? Any parts that jump out at you as daunting or games that you have circled?
Yeah, I mean, I looked it up earlier. The NFC West, 18 primetime games. Now, the 3 others on this call have 5 each. We're sitting at 3, and we can get flexed out, but we're not on Sunday Night Football. I think it's a fair schedule. The first 3 out of 4 on the road. We play against the Titans, a very physical team. We'll find out how physical the Cardinals were. That was a point of emphasis. Week 2, Patrick Peterson will make his debut here, arrival. And then they go to Jacksonville, a young quarterback, new head coach. And then in week 4, we play the Rams at SoFi. So not a lot of back-to-back road games. You look at the first 3 out of 4 at home, then the 4 out of final 6, 3 national games. We play the Colts on it's going to be on Saturday, Christmas night on the NFL Network. We host the Rams on Monday Night Football. Cold weather games, maybe Chicago early December. We'll see if maybe Justin Fields is in there. So it's not daunting. Now, 2 teams that we play, we don't know who the quarterback's going to be, and that would be Houston. Is it Tyrod Taylor? And then we also have the Packers on the schedule. So right now, if we could avoid Deshaun Watson and Aaron Rodgers, that may help. But I do definitely want to see a good game and quality game. So, and then we finish at home we haven't done that in a long time. We finish with the Seahawks. So it's going to be interesting. We got a game against Dallas. That's Kyler Murray going back there again. So we faced Andy Dalton last year, and it'll be different with Dak Prescott. So I think it was fair. I think there's balance in the schedule. And, we were one of the teams last year that got canceled to go to Mexico. So there was some chatter that the Jaguars were going to have 2 games in London, one Falcons home game, but we didn't draw that. So eventually, because we are hosting the Super Bowl 2023, so we have to give up a home game at some point, but they didn't do that this year. And I probably think it's because of COVID.
Keiana, I'm guessing you're just hoping to get 8 games at home this year and not having to pack up and move again. So in addition to that, hopefully being the case, what are your takeaways from the Niners schedule?
Yeah, thankfully, Mike, I don't have to ask you to scoot over and let's be roommates for a couple of weeks. So that's what we're hoping for. But looking at the schedule, I think what stands out, especially compared to last year, was there was a daunting, actually the last 2 years, the 49ers had daunting stretches that were kind of coming towards the end of the season, whether that be, their NFC West opponents, also Green Bay, New Orleans, teams like this. But it's not really like that this year, thankfully. It's pretty balanced out. They are going to open up the season first in Detroit and then carrying on to Philadelphia. And we know the 49ers are one of those teams that when they have back-to-back East Coast trips, they keep that team on the East Coast. They try to avoid any type of lag or lull that the team will have to deal with. So I'm pretty sure that will probably happen this year. But I found like a little stat that kind of relates to all of us, but West Coast teams have a combined 72-86 record when playing in 10 a.m. starts. And I know we have quite a few of those East Coast trips this year. So that's just something that stood out when looking at the schedule. But besides that, highly anticipated matchup comes week 3. They're starting off at home against the Packers. And we know that there's so much rivalry between the Packers and the 49ers. There's always those ties with their head coach and Kyle Shanahan, the LaFleurs and Shanahan, also Aaron Rodgers coming back to his hometown. So that's their season home opener. It's definitely going to be one of those highly anticipated matchups. And then when I look at the schedule, what stands out is obviously the divisional matchups. I always say this is a dogfight of a division. Closing out against the Rams. I know we've had Seattle the last 2 years, but I think that's a game that, looking down that stretch, these games could have a lot of those playoff implications. So looking forward to a lot of these matchups. But again, I agree. It's a fairly fair schedule. Not too many of those East Coast back-to-back. So I'm looking forward to it.
Now you realize when you say the back of the schedule doesn't look too daunting, that always changes on you. We always look at, we play the game of win, loss, and then teams we think are good are not, teams we think are bad are good. So
that's what Kyle Shanahan actually said last year. He said that last year, that, you look at a schedule and people are already like, oh yeah, this one you're crossing off and you're circling. And he said, by time week 3 hits, that team can look drastically different than what you thought they would look like in April and May. So, we never know. Atlanta Falcons can be, who knows what, in the NFC South. Same goes for, the Titans and the Bengals. So a lot can be said, but as of now, we'll just say that it looks very fair for the 49ers.
Now you mentioned they're going to Detroit and Philadelphia. So basically, they faced Jared Goff in the past, new head coach, and then Jalen Hurts, and you can get off to a 2-0 start. You have a 4th place schedule, which is only 2 extra games, but that can make a difference in the NFC West every year. Tiebreakers, who's playing for something in seedings in week 16 and 17. It's fascinating.
I will say, you know what? It was very unfortunate, the 49ers, what they had to deal with back in 2020 with all of those injuries. But when you look at the 2021 schedule, it kind of played to their favor, playing a lot of these last place teams. So that's a great point you brought up, the Eagles, the Falcons, and also the Bengals. So hopefully, I'm knocking on wood over here, but that was definitely a positive of a very negative 2020 for the 49ers.
See, I don't like that part of the schedule as much. Got
what happens with
three first place teams in the schedule. Stu, how about you? How's that Ram schedule looking to you?
Yeah, I think the game that everybody has circled on the calendar is week 3 against the defending Super Bowl champion Buccaneers. They're coming to SoFi Stadium in Los Angeles on September 26th. For obvious reasons, the biggest reason why I would say is because the Rams are trying to accomplish the same thing the Buccaneers accomplished with hoisting the Lombardi Trophy on their home field with SoFi Stadium, scheduled to host the Super Bowl this upcoming season. So that's going to be an exciting one, especially when you take into account the Buccaneers basically bringing back what feels like everybody from their Super Bowl winning team. So that's one that I'm looking forward to. Obviously, you can't ignore opening at home on Sunday Night Football, opening the season at home on Sunday Night Football for the second straight year. It's another one that I think a lot of people are looking forward to. And then I'm always curious where the bye lands. The Rams have kind of had a nice week 9 midpoint bye over the last couple of years. This year it falls at week 11, which is right before a game against the Green Bay Packers. So, and of course the Packers game is in a swath of matchups that are East Coast travel, cold weather cities there toward December and January. So another thing I also made a note of, but overall feel pretty good about it. There are some good measuring stick games that they're going to see, I think, in each segment of the season. So lots of good challenges, lots of exciting matchups. I'm really looking forward to it.
Hey, Stu, not sure if you knew of this fact, but you talk about week 3 being circled on a lot of fans' calendars. Tom Brady has played in 299 NFL games, but never won in Los Angeles. This will be his first game playing in Los Angeles.
Yeah, that's an interesting stat, but I think, as anybody who's followed the NFL for a long time knows, it's no matter what the statistics say, even if it works in the opposite of Brady's favor, it's never wise to go against it or assume the opposite, right?
Well, I think the following week they play the Patriots, right? The Buccaneers, week 4.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see them overlooking it, though. Arians will have them ready, and I think Todd Bowles did a great job last year and what they did that in the playoffs. So now preseason games, hopefully we get some preseason games because these young players, they need it.
Yeah, it was interesting last year seeing, you had, at least from the receivers, what felt like so many record-setting performances and, without, much of an off-season program or typical training camp. And as they're navigating that right now, of course, I'm with you, Mike. It would certainly be nice to see that, especially for us to see kind of where these guys are developmentally beyond just, a scrimmage setting, a live scrimmage setting, if you will. So,
and it was interesting to me. It was interesting to me to see how it seemed like that lack of preseason really seemed to benefit offense more than defense. I don't think we knew what that would look like. And then you had just some record-setting numbers early in the season, and then defense slowly started to catch up and make it a little more normal. So yeah, hopefully we get that 3-game preseason and get back to normal times with fans and everything else.
Well, you could just see poor tackling, poor technique. I mean, you can't hit it like you do in training camp. And, I even talked to Chandler Jones, and here's a veteran guy, obviously has a ton of sacks. He said, I needed a preseason game. Now, he came in there a little heavy, so he was huffing and puffing. But, but these young guys, I mean, the next time they play is going to be in a game. And if you're a backup and you're on special teams, I mean, you're one play away. So, I don't know if the Cardinals, I know they consider doing a joint practice. I don't know how that would fly, even though vaccination. I think we have the Cowboys, Chiefs, and Saints, and 2 of the teams come to State Farm. So we can never host a team here because it's too hot. The Niners pulled it off just late in the year when they practice outside and were able to stay in the hotel. But I think joint practices personally are better than preseason games, even though you could put your number 1 receiver on their number 1 corner, and coaches have an agreement before the practices, if anybody fights, they get out of there, but pass rushers against left tackles. And now you can see how a young guy goes against a veteran guy. So I hope they get back to joint practices. I know Belichick's done it a lot over the years.
Mike, did you say you guys open with 3 of 4 at home or on the road? At home?
3 or 4 on the road.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Seahawks are the same way. So it's kind of that daunting start of back-to-back playoff, AFC South playoff teams.
Yeah. And I think it's great because, I know Arthur Smith did a really good job, creating space for that team, but, Dow Loggins, I think, is going to be the guy there. And Jim Schwartz is kind of a consultant. He's going to help with the game plan. But the Cardinals talk about being physical. Well, they didn't show it in week 16 and 17 last year against the Rams and 49ers. So we'll see. That's a great test because, Derrick Henry, he'll run right down your throat.
All right, John, tell us a little bit about your schedule. What stands out? Any daunting stretches?
Yeah, I mean, that opening stretch really is pretty daunting with, like I said, back-to-back AFC South playoff teams. You got 3 or 4 on the road with trips to Indy, Minnesota, and San Francisco. And I know the 49ers weren't a playoff team last year, but quality-wise, that's a playoff team if they're healthy. To me, one that, when you talk about circling games, that October 7th, week 5 against the Rams, it'll be only the second home game for the Seahawks. It's a Thursday night game. We're working under the assumption it'll be a full stadium or pretty close to it. So just the energy of a night game at what is now Lumen Field is hard to top. So I think that's just going to be, both for the quality of the football game, but just the excitement in the building, a really exciting one. Like everybody else in this division, going to Green Bay. Always, Lambeau's always a tough place. The Seahawks have, in the kind of Russell Wilson era since 2012, the Seahawks are 4-0 against Green Bay at home and 0-4 at Lambeau. So they're trying to break that streak. They are coming off a bye heading into that game, which will help, but that's going to be a tough one. And then, any December, January NFC West game is always big, because I feel like every game in the division will have playoff implications. And then, we close out in Arizona for the second year in a row, although against a different team this year. Week 17 last year was against the Niners. This year it'll be against Arizona. But to me, it's really that early stretch of seeing where the team is at. And to Mike's point, seeing where they're at physically, when you've got some, really strong rushing attacks, you've got good defensive fronts against the Colts. It'll just be a really good test to kind of see where the team's at in the trenches in the first 4 or 5 weeks of the season.
Am I one of the only ones that looked at the schedule and seeing that there's 18 weeks that was just a little overwhelmed?
It's weird.
It's going to be a long year, you guys.
I know. It's weird.
Well,
we'll see how the players handle it.
Yeah, and it's more like, okay, Jeff Fisher, I'm not going 9-7. I mean, it's weird. You're going to finish 10-7, 11.
Yeah, just the final records will look weird when you see a team that's
because you
8-7 or
6-10. No, yeah,
all those records are going to look weird, but ultimately the fans get more games, and that's good for the league and good for the fans. Hopefully everybody can stay healthy for it, though. That's obviously the biggest concern.
Yeah, I look on this call and I'm thinking, all right, how many playoff teams are coming from the West? And we know at least two.
Yeah. It's one of those, how, what teams are healthy and what.
Yes.
There's 4 playoff caliber teams, but
I agree.
Realistically, they beat each other up enough that one of those 4 is not going to, somebody's going to be 9-8 or 10-7 and miss out. But I think that's, to my point about those December, January division games. Yeah. I think every one of those you're going to be looking at playoff scenarios and all that. So it's going to be fun. Keep those Niners healthy. We don't need a team just getting beat up so badly this year.
I know. Someone mentioned that it's every odd year when the 49ers perform better. So, being 2021, who knows? We'll see.
So the San Francisco Giants have the even year magic and the Niners get odd year. Is that how it works?
We just switch off. It's better for the fan base.
There you go. All right. Well, I think we've covered everything important. If nobody else has anything else, we'll let you go. I appreciate the 3 of you joining again. This was fun.
Absolutely. Thank you. Good luck.
We'll have to come up with an excuse to do it again.
Yeah.
All right. Stay healthy, everyone. Thanks.
All right. Take care. Thank you.
Thanks, John.